Good afternoon. The first item of business this afternoon is consideration of Business Motion 5093 in the name of Joe Fitzpatrick on behalf of the Parliamentary Bureau, setting out a revision to the business programme for today. Any member who wishes to speak against the motion should press the request to speak button now, and I call on Joe Fitzpatrick to move motion number 5093.
And in moving, Presiding Officer, can I say that the change of decision time to 6 p.m. tonight will allow for a fuller debate on the Referendum Committee's report on the Section 30 order.
Thank you, Minister. No member has asked to speak against the motion. Therefore, I will now put the question to the Chamber. The question is that motion number 5093, in the name of Joe Fitzpatrick, be agreed to. Are we all agreed? The motion is therefore agreed to. We now move to portfolio questions, finance, employment and sustainable growth. Question number 1, Linda Fabiani.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government when it will publish its proposals for the third National Planning Framework.
Minister Derek McCann.
The National Planning Framework 3 main issues report will be published for consultation in March 2013. Following consultation, the proposed National Planning Framework 3 will be published in late 2013.
Linda Fabiani.
Thank you, Minister. The Minister will be aware of the recent task force set up by South Lanarkshire Council to address the very specific issues in East Kilbride and the town's economic future. May I ask how the proposals for the candidate national developments will align with Scottish planning policy so that the challenges presented by these significant economic situations can be met?
Minister.
I think very helpfully the review of Scottish planning policy with the National Planning Framework will run concurrently, so it will work in tandem so they have mutual benefit, both focusing on sustainable economic growth. And we've outlined to Parliament in the statement I gave earlier this year in Parliament on how candidate projects would be assessed, and I can give an assurance that all candidate projects will be assessed and be transparent in the publication of how they were considered as part of the processes I've outlined.
Question number 2, Claire Baker.
To ask the Scottish Government whether to expect Scottish Enterprise to decide on the location of the Arriva turbine site.
Minister Fergus Ewing.
The Memorandum of Understanding between Scottish Enterprise and Arriva sets out both parties' intentions to work together to find the most appropriate location for Arriva's UK turbine manufacturing site and to support Scotland in becoming an offshore wind manufacturing hub. The final decision on location and therefore the timing of this decision will be for the company to make.
Claire Baker.
Thank you. The award of the Arriva site would be good for the Fife Energy Park in Methil and the local economy, bringing in much-needed investment and ensuring that Fife is at the forefront of the renewable sector in Scotland. Is the Minister able to confirm whether or not Fife Energy Park in Methil is being actively considered as a location for the Arriva site, or whether there are concerns over capacity at the site?
Minister.
Well, I'm aware of the good work which is done in Fife by a number of companies and the support it has locally, and we value that. It is for the company to decide where to locate. The company has made a commitment in Paris on the 19th of November this year that it will locate its UK turbine manufacturing site in Scotland, and that will, we believe, Presiding Officer, pave the way to create a great deal of jobs, up to 750 jobs from manufacturing and the supporting supply chain. So it is absolutely correct that Claire Baker lobbies for the area that she represents, and I'm sure that they will feature in the potential decision-making of the company. It is for the company to decide which particular location they decide to opt for, and I'm delighted that they've shown that commitment to Scotland, especially since I did visit their Bremerhaven operation in June this year.
Mary Scanlon.
Presiding Officer, without wishing to ask the Minister to lobby for the area that he represents, can I ask that, given the planning application announced from the Ardeshir yard today, to make it fit and for purpose for renewable energy manufacture, can I ask if he would support any development at that yard?
Minister.
Of course, as a local MSP, I very much welcome progress being made to see Ardersier going into use again. Many of us can remember the heyday of its oil fabrication success, and we're now, thanks to the Scottish Government's renewable policy, supported, I'm pleased to say, by all parties in this chamber in September when we debated the issue, at a stage where we see massive opportunities all around our coasts, including at Nig, potentially Ardersier, in Wick, in Montrose, in Leith, in Methil, in Dundee, in Kishorn, in Orkney, and in Libster, in Scrabster. I could go on, Presiding Officer. What is great news is that all over Scotland we're seeing these opportunities created because of our unwavering support for the potential that renewable energy off our coasts has for Scotland and her communities.
Kenneth Gibson.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Can I just say that given the fact that North Ayrshire is, according to Experian, predicted to have the highest level, the lowest level of economic growth of any of the UK's 378 local authorities in the next 5 years, it would be great if we could get some renewable industries at Hunterston, where we have a deep harbour and a highly skilled workforce nearby.
Minister.
I think that resembled more of a statement than a question. But notwithstanding that, I am happy to say that we are well aware of the aspirations that Hunterston has, and indeed I understand that planning permission has already been granted in respect of a testing facility to Mitsubishi. That's a very, very important development. Therefore, I very much hope that we can work together with Mr Gibson, who is always a strong advocate for the interests of North Ayrshire, in ensuring that it is by no means left out, but the success already in Hunterston, the ability to attract a company of the status, international status of Mitsubishi, is a huge testimony to the massive effort that our colleagues in Scottish Enterprise have made in successfully gaining the interest and commitment of companies throughout the world to locate in Scotland. It's a truly momentous achievement thus far, and the work now is to translate that commitment into a great number of jobs and businesses throughout the whole country.
Question number 3, Angus MacDonald. I think you need your card, Mr MacDonald.
Apologies, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government when it last met Falkirk Council and what matters were discussed.
Minister, Eric Mackay.
The Scottish Government meets regularly with Scotland's councils to discuss a wide range of issues. I last met with Falkirk Council on the 9th of August.
Angus MacDonald.
Thank you. The Cabinet Secretary, the Minister will be aware that the Falkirk tax incremental funding bid has the potential to attract nearly £600 million worth of investment to over 8,000 local jobs to my constituency over the next 25 years. Now that the business case has been submitted, when does the Scottish Government and the Scottish Futures Trust expect to make a final decision and announcement on whether this exciting TIF project can go ahead?
Minister.
Members will be well aware of the potential benefits from the tax incremental finance scheme. In November 2011, the Scottish Government invited Falkirk Council to develop a TIF business case for its £52 million project, focusing on direct investment, key strategic road improvements, Grangemouth flood defences and site-enabling works. The Council is currently working with the Scottish Futures Trust to finalise the business case, and once complete we will look forward to receiving it formally and then consider it in due course.
Question number 4, Dave Thompson.
To ask the Scottish Government what progress it has made in helping communities to benefit from the use of renewables.
Minister, Fergus Shearing.
Through initiatives like our flagship Community and Renewable Energy Scheme, loan scheme, and the Public Register of Community Benefits, we are both supporting community ownership of renewable energy and also helping to ensure that communities benefit from commercial projects. And we are making good progress towards each of these aims. We are around one-third towards our target for 500 megawatts of community and locally owned renewables across Scotland by 2020, and our support for community renewables was recognised recently by the OECD as a pioneering policy intervention and a global example of good practice in taking a bottom-up approach to renewable energy.
Dave Thompson.
thank the Minister for his reply. The First Minister asked Highlands and Islands Enterprise last year to develop a pilot project for community involvement and equity in renewable projects. Can the Minister tell us what progress has been made with that pilot, and in particular the involvement of Glenelg and Arnisdale Community Trust in the marine current turbines project in the Kylrie Narrows, which was to be used to test that pilot?
Minister.
I thank the member for giving me notice of this, and I'm aware that the First Minister met members of the Glenelg and Arnisdale Development Trust last November. Since then, there have been a number of meetings between officials of HIE, Community Energy Scotland, and the Scottish Government and the Trust. The Trust have accepted our offer to provide funding for an independent assessment on the investment opportunity open to them, including an investigation into financial models that might be adopted. Work on this is well advanced. The report is due for completion early in the new year, I can tell the local member. Once the report is available, a further meeting will take place with the Trust to explore how Scottish Government funding for community renewables, either through CARES, that's the loan scheme, or REEF, that's the Renewable Energy Investment Fund, could support this project. And we will continue to offer support to the Trust as it seeks to take this project forward, and keep Dave Thompson, as the local member campaigning on this issue, closely informed.
Rhoda Grant.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The Minister will be aware that community developments in the Western Isles are being delayed because of slippage in the interconnector to the islands. You'll also be aware that those delays add to costs. Can I ask what the Scottish Government are doing to speed up this process of the delivery of an interconnector? Minister.
Rhoda Grant is right to raise this matter. It's of huge concern to us. That's why in June this year I wrote to Ed Davey suggesting that because of its importance we set up an intergovernmental body to consider the matter. I was pleased that Ed Davey agreed to that, and I believe the first meeting of that intergovernmental group is or has just taken place, or is just about to take place. It is absolutely essential that we address the issue of transmission charges to the islands. This is a problem that has existed for some time, but has exacerbated when the estimated cost of the connection went up from, and I'll need to check the figures, but I think just below 500 million to over 700 million. This has had a massive knock-on effect, so that the mainland charges, if the recommendations of Ofgem were accepted, would be £10 per megawatt hour on the mainland to £150 or thereabouts on the islands. And again, I'll check those precise figures, but they indicate the scale of the problem. Presiding Officer, it is essential that we tackle this problem together with the UK Government, and we are working extremely positively towards finding a solution with them. It is necessary if we are to realise the potential in our islands for renewable energy, and indeed Shetland, Orkney and the Western Isles are the place in the UK where there is the very best potential renewable energy, both onshore and marine. So we are determined to solve this problem and to work with people like Rhoda Grant, who campaigns quite rightly on these issues.
Chick Brodie.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I too welcome the Minister's comments. Would the Minister care also to comment on the EET Committee's report on the achievability of the Scottish Government's renewable energy targets, and specifically the conclusion that, and I quote, "The generation of community-owned energy brings benefits beyond financial ones. The income can increase the sustainability of fragile communities, lead to greater social cohesion and provide work for local people in areas such as energy efficiency."
Minister.
Yes, I welcome the report from the committee. I hope we have the opportunity to debate it, Presiding Officer, in due course. He is absolutely right to point out to the enormous benefits to communities. The target of 500 megawatts, which we're one-third of the way to achieving, could be worth £2,400 million to communities in Scotland over the project's lifetime. Since 2007, over 800 grants for community renewables schemes have been awarded, with some £16 million. And now we have the CARES loan scheme. We are absolutely determined that communities across Scotland should receive every practical and affordable assistance that we can provide them with in order to realise their aspirations to have community renewable energy schemes. And the benefits therefrom are of a huge variety, and increasingly people are becoming aware of them, and that is a good thing. So I welcome the cross-party support there is for community renewables and undertake to work with all parties to advance them across Scotland.
Question 5, Willie Coffey.
To ask the Scottish Government what it's doing to develop cooperative businesses.
Cabinet Secretary John Swinney.
Presiding Officer, the Scottish Government supports the ongoing work of Cooperative Development Scotland, a subsidiary of Scottish Enterprise, in its promotion of cooperative business models and its hands-on work with new and existing cooperative enterprises. In addition, businesses operating cooperative models in Scotland can also receive general advice and support from Business Gateway, Scottish Enterprise and Highlands and Islands Enterprise.
Willie Coffey.
Can I thank the Cabinet Secretary for that answer? He'll be aware that this is, of course, International Year of Cooperatives, and in Scotland we currently have over 500 co-op businesses employing over 28,000 people and turning over £4 billion. Does the Cabinet Secretary have any plans to extend the good work already being done by the Scottish Government to further promote cooperative businesses within our local communities and to see an even greater participation in this successful cooperative model?
Cabinet Secretary.
I answered a question in the last Parliament from Bill Butler, who asked me what the Government was going to do to celebrate International Year of Cooperatives. And I have to say, when Mr Butler asked me that question, I think probably in about 2010, it was news to me that International Year of Cooperatives was going to be in 2012. I'm glad to say, after Mr Butler's prompting, that we have taken forward a series of events to mark International Year of Cooperatives and to celebrate the achievements that have been made. But as importantly, or possibly more importantly, we have also committed ourselves to supporting and developing the enhancement of the cooperative model within Scotland. And over the last number of months, I've been taking part in a number of discussions and visits with cooperative enterprises to make sure that the type of measures that I set out in my original answer are fully available at the disposal of cooperatives in Scotland. We are keen to ensure that Cooperative Development Scotland continues its work through the Scottish Enterprise Network, and I can assure Mr Coffey and colleagues that at this particular time in the economic cycle, where new business models need to be developed and taken forward, the cooperative model possesses some very substantial strengths for development within the Scottish economy, and the Government will give support to assist in the development of such enterprises.
John Scott.
Presiding Officer, and declaring an interest, Presiding Officer, as a Council member of ACOS and also Farmers Markets, can I ask the Cabinet Secretary if the UK legislation required to support and develop the cooperative movement in Scotland, and in particular the capability and development of ACOS, can I ask if this legislation is now in place, and if not, when does he expect this legislative process to be completed?
Cabinet Secretary.
Mr Scott will have to forgive me for not being able to give him a definitive answer at this stage in question time, but I will ensure that that is explored speedily and a response will be given to Mr Scott in writing.
Question number 6, Annabel Ewing.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what response it has received from the UK Government to its recent call for an immediate targeted boost to capital investment.
Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, I am working on the basis that the Chancellor's autumn statement was the response.
Annabel Ewing.
I thank the Cabinet Secretary for his reply. Taking into account the unprecedented UK Government cuts to the Scottish capital budget that we have already suffered, can the Cabinet Secretary indicate how long the Scottish Government has been calling for the release of capital to invest in public sector projects? And can he indicate at this stage how many jobs he thinks may be supported further to the announcement today?
Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, can I congratulate Annabel Ewing on perhaps conspiring to get the swiftest response to an autumn budget statement from a Scottish Government at any time in the past, since it only completed being delivered to the House of Commons about an hour ago. Can I say that there are a number of elements of the autumn budget statement that the Scottish Government welcomes, particularly in relation to capital investment. As Parliament will know, Ministers have, for a sustained amount of time, put pressure on the United Kingdom Government to change its approach on capital spending, because we considered the reduction of 33% in capital budgets was far too severe. And as the growth figures which have been published by the Office of Budget Responsibility today demonstrate, that approach has harmed the development of growth within the economy. We welcome the announcements that have been made in relation to capital investment today, and note also that the United Kingdom Government has learnt a lesson from the Scottish Government in transferring resource into capital to support long-term investment in the Scottish economy, and we welcome that into the bargain.
Gavin Brown.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Can I welcome the Cabinet Secretary's welcome to the UK Government's autumn statement. In the Scottish Government press release, there are 40 or so projects mentioned that they describe as shovel-ready. As it stands today, how many have not completed the planning and procurement process?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, there'll be a whole number of them will definitely not have completed the procurement process, because how on earth could we lead the market up the garden path to deliver projects that we do not have the money for? And the purpose of a shovel-ready project list is to have projects that are ready to be delivered on the ground, but for which we can't commit to them until we've got the money. If that is the level of sophisticated questioning that I'm to be subjected to by the Conservative Party, heaven help the Conservative Party today.
Question 7, Murdo Fraser.
Thank you. To ask the Scottish Government how it ensures that companies setting up or expanding activities in Scotland comply with the conditions attached to any financial assistance it has granted.
Cabinet Secretary.
All available schemes of financial assistance have clear monitoring and audit processes set out in the terms of the award of assistance, and projects are monitored to ensure compliance with national rules and agreed terms and conditions.
Murdo Fraser.
Can I thank the Cabinet Secretary for his response? When Amazon came to Fife last year, they received more than £8 million in support from the Scottish Government. At that time, they promised to create 750 permanent jobs, but to date only half of these have been delivered, with many other workers on short-term or casual contracts. What is the Scottish Government doing to ensure that companies like Amazon not just pay their taxes, but more importantly, keep their promises?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, as Mr Fraser will know, the Scottish Government does not have responsibility for the collection of the taxes that are liable by Amazon, other than in relation to the payment of non-domestic rates for the property that they occupy at Dunfermline. And, of course, the issues in relation to tax collection are very much the property of Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs, which I would remind Mr Fraser is a reserved organisation. In relation to the payment of any grant awards in relation to the responsibilities of the Scottish Government, payments are made in instalments, typically over several years, as job and capital expenditure targets are met. Scottish Enterprise is responsible for the monitoring of all of these grant payments, and they require companies to submit formal applications for payment of the instalments of grant, which usually includes a formal certification of the claim by an independent accountant. When the grant has been paid, Scottish Enterprise then monitors the project over a fixed period set out in the grant agreement, and requires the company to submit formal monitoring reports to ensure that all conditions have been met. Now, in all circumstances, these payments are monitored on a regular basis, and on occasions where companies have, for example, had grant paid to them and then decided to scale down their operation, we reclaim grant from those individuals by virtue of the monitoring processes that we undertake. So I would assure Mr Fraser and Parliament that the administration of these grant payments is taken very seriously in terms of the Regional Selective Assistance system, and we will continue to monitor these questions in relation to Amazon and all other recipients of Regional Selective Assistance.
Ken McIntosh.
Can I thank the Cabinet Secretary for his response there? But can I ask him, given what we now know about Amazon's affairs, does he regret not imposing stricter conditions? For example, insisting on transparency of the company's tax affairs, insisting on trade union recognition, insisting on decent and minimum standards of employment, and insisting on the living wage being paid as a minimum to all employees.
Cabinet Secretary.
I think, whilst I'm actually very sympathetic to Mr McIntosh's view on this question, that I think employers have got to act in a responsible fashion, that have got to remunerate their staff properly, that they have got to commit to long-term investment and long-term continuity for staff. And so I have no real disagreement strategically with Mr McIntosh on this question. Without the benefit of legal advice at my side, which of course I could never disclose its presence, I would want to be I'm doubtful that all of the factors that Mr Macintosh asked me to apply, I would have legal authority to apply. And that's not to be difficult about it. Yeah. It's just to acknowledge that there are certain limitations on the powers of this Parliament. I would rather be in a position to give Mr Macintosh a much more encouraging answer about the long-term commitments that we can require of companies, but I do have to operate within a legal framework that is set for me under the Scotland Act.
Question number 8, Kenneth Gibson.
To ask the Scottish Government what steps it is taking to boost manufacturing employment and output.
Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, working together with industry, the Scottish Government provides integrated support for the manufacturing sector in Scotland through Scottish Enterprise, Hans Enterprise, Skills Development Scotland, Scottish Development International, the Funding Council, local development organisations and relevant trade bodies. Specific support includes the work of the Scottish Manufacturing Advisory Service, which has now assisted over 3,000 individual companies by completing nearly 2,000 manufacturing reviews, which have contributed around £92 million extra value added to assisted companies.
Kenneth Gibson.
I thank the Cabinet Secretary for his reply. The Cabinet Secretary will be aware that in the decade to 2007, Scotland lost a third in Ayrshire, half of its manufacturing employment with a corresponding decline in output, and that was before the recession hit. Given that manufacturing remains a key component of the Scottish economy, how are our universities and colleges addressing key skills shortages in our manufacturing sector to ensure the sector flourishes in the decades ahead?
Cabinet Secretary.
I believe we're making good progress in this area. I acknowledge the significance of the point that Mr Gibson raises, because our universities and colleges are integral to addressing those key skills shortages. We have, for example, in Mr Gibson's, I think it's just adjacent to Mr Gibson's constituency at the GlaxoSmithKline plant in Irvine. It will be adjacent to Mr Gibson's constituency, but in North Ayrshire. The Government has worked with the company and with the University of Strathclyde and Scottish Enterprise and North Ayrshire Council to essentially create very focused support to assist in the recruitment of skilled personnel for that manufacturing facility. And indeed, on a more general level in Scotland, the number of students in higher education institutions studying engineering and technology has risen by 18% since 2007-8, which I think is a welcome indication of the strengthening of the skill base to support our manufacturing sector in Scotland.
Before we go on to question number 9, can I just say to members that I'd like succinct questions and answers if I'm to make progress through the list of questions. Question number 9, Alex Johnson.
To ask the Scottish Government, in the light of the reported 1.3% fall in sales in October 2012, whether it will reconsider the so-called public health levy.
Cabinet Secretary.
Responding to your very positive requirement, Presiding Officer, the Government does not intend to reconsider the public health supplement.
Alex Johnson.
We have become used in this chamber to hearing the Government make all sorts of claims about how it would spend more money if it had the power to do so. And we also hear that it would cut every tax. Can the Government please give me an explanation as to how they will match the performance of the UK Government today in reducing the burden on the growing sectors of our retail economy?
Cabinet Secretary.
Can I just say to Mr Johnson that this is a responsible government that balances its budget every year, that does not make unaffordable spending commitments over there, which we hear all the time. That's before I get over to this side of the chamber into the bargain. So I'll take no lessons from Mr Johnson about the importance of effective fiscal management. In relation to Mr Johnson's point about business taxation, I would say to Mr Johnson that before the autumn statement and after the autumn statement, the Government in Scotland offers the most comprehensive system of business rates relief of any part of the United Kingdom. The bit of business taxation that we can control, that was the case before the autumn statement today, and it remains the case after the autumn statement today.
Question number 10, in the name of Bob Doris, has not been lodged. The member has provided an explanation. Question number 11, Gord MacDonald.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what its response is to the Scottish Enterprise Report, Spends and Trends UK Continental Shelf 2012 to 2016.
Cabinet Secretary.
The Scottish Enterprise Spends and Trends UKCS 2012 to 16 report is a further and welcome confirmation of the vast potential of Scotland's oil and gas sector now and in the future. With more than half of the value of the North Sea's oil and gas reserves yet to be extracted, up to 24 billion recoverable barrels with a potential wholesale value of £1.5 trillion, Scotland's oil and gas sector will remain an enormous economic resource for decades to come.
Lord MacDonald.
I thank the Cabinet Secretary for that answer. The report highlights an expected capital investment of £44 billion and identifies 86 new UK continental shelf fields where work is underway or could begin before 2016. Given the level of capital investment by companies operating in the North Sea, does the Cabinet Secretary agree that the sector will remain an enormous economic resource for Scotland for decades to come?
Cabinet Secretary.
Point, and I recognise also the significant and intense level of economic activity that is going on around about the north east of Scotland in terms of the oil and gas sector. We are seeing very substantial levels of investment and commitment, and the Government is working very collaboratively with the sector. Mr Ewing has been in Aberdeen this week for a series of further discussions with oil and gas companies, and we look forward to continuing that work to ensure that the industry feels well supported by the Scottish Government in realising its economic potential.
Question number 12, Richard Baker.
Thank you. To ask the Scottish Government when the Energy Academy will begin its work.
Minister Fergus Ewing.
Presiding Officer, work has already begun on the Scottish Energy Skills Academy initiative. My officials are currently consulting with industry, skills providers and relevant public bodies to discuss this proposal and its alignment with current national frameworks.
Richard Baker.
Well, this is good news and it's a very welcome initiative, but it's still not clear how many institutions will be involved in delivery of the Academy. Can the Minister inform us which institutions will be involved in its work, and will he agree that, as the energy capital of Scotland, where he visited recently, and indeed of Europe, Aberdeen should be the centre for the Academy and indeed the base of its leadership?
Minister.
Well, the Scottish Energy Skills Academy will be developed as a Scotland-wide academy, and I'm pleased to say that we are making great progress. Just this week, I had useful meetings with senior representatives from Aberdeen University, Robert Gordon University, Aberdeen College and Bamford Buchan College, all of whom do excellent work already, work that we want to be enhanced and increased. Therefore, I think it is correct that we see much of the oil and gas focus of the Energy Academy centred in Aberdeen when this initiative is announced. But could I just say to members that I think rather than rush to launch the initiative, it is important that we get it right, and important for the reason that we need to align the activities and efforts of academe with those of industry and those of government. That is what we want, and that, I believe, is what the oil and gas industry wants, and that is what we intend in due course to deliver.
Question 13, Colin Keir.
To ask the Scottish Government when it last met the City of Edinburgh Council to discuss the impact of PPP-PFI on its budget.
Cabinet Secretary.
The impact of PPP-PFI on the City of Edinburgh Council's budget is a matter for the local authority.
Colin Keir.
Okay. Can I ask the Cabinet Secretary if he has an idea of the total cost that the City of Edinburgh Council repayments come to for these schools in Edinburgh over the past financial year, and what impact these contracts are having on the Council's ability to finance frontline council services?
Cabinet Secretary.
I don't have a figure for the last financial year, but from 2013 forward, the contracted unitary charge payments in respect of these is estimated to be £1.047 billion. That will relate to the PPP1 project, which is due to end in 2033-34, and the PPP2 project due to end in 2038-39. These are clearly issues, significant sums that have to be considered within the prudential framework for finance of the City of Edinburgh Council. And as Mr Kerr will know, I have introduced for the first time a framework within which any revenue-financed commitments have to be set, and the Government is working within that framework.
Question 14, Neil Bibby.
To ask the Scottish Government how much it plans to spend on economic development in Paisley.
Cabinet Secretary.
The Scottish Government is committed to increasing sustainable economic growth across all parts of Scotland, including in Paisley. We are maximising our capital spending to support infrastructure investment and jobs throughout Scotland. This is undertaken through the work of Scottish Enterprise as part of the Government's economic strategy. Since 2011, through regional selective assistance, Scottish Enterprise has supported 9 Renfrewshire companies with offers totalling £4.4 million, creating and safeguarding 359 jobs.
Neil Bibby.
I thank the Cabinet Secretary for his answer. It's clear that there is a link between economic development in an area and the funding local councils receive. Renfrewshire Council is investing what it can in the local economy, but this is regrettably not being matched by the Scottish Government. Renfrewshire has been the only mainland council in Scotland to have been on the funding grant floor for the past 3 years. Will the Cabinet Secretary come to Paisley to meet with myself and the Council Leader Mark McMillan to discuss Paisley's social and economic needs and a fair deal for Renfrewshire?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, I've met with Councillor McMillan on 2 occasions already to discuss the financial situation in Renfrewshire Council. If Mr Bibby wants to have a meeting about that, I'd be only too happy to extend the courtesy of a meeting to him. What I've explained to Councillor McMillan is the fact that the funding settlement that applies to Renfrewshire is a product of the local government distribution formula that has been agreed by the Convention of Scottish Local Authorities, and it really is a matter for COSLA to determine if it wishes to reopen the distribution formula that it agreed with the government at the time of the spending review. Now, I don't really sense much of an appetite within COSLA to do that, because for as many colleagues that would come to make the point that Mr Bibby has made to Parliament today, there would no doubt be a whole range of his colleagues coming here to say that the resources could not be taken from them. And as I set out in the local government funding settlement statement last week, local government has fared better under had been a better financial position within the spending review settlement since 2007-8 compared to the overall budget of the Scottish Government.
Question 15, Claudia Beamish.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what support it is giving to the development of employment across ages in rural areas.
Cabinet Secretary.
The Scottish Government seeks to raise employment for people of all ages in all parts of Scotland. Support for new and existing businesses is a key element of this. Last year we supplemented this approach by creating a forum specifically to help rural areas overcome some of the distinct challenges around helping people into work. On the 5th of November this year, my colleagues Angela Constance and Richard Lockhead were pleased to take part in a Rural Employment Skills Summit held in Oban. I am hopeful that the actions from this event will make a real and lasting difference to rural Scotland.
Claudia Beamish.
I thank the Cabinet Secretary for that answer. And as the Cabinet Secretary will be aware, age is one of the 9 protected characteristics in the Equality Act of 2010. Can the Cabinet Secretary qualify what assessment has been made by the Scottish Government with regards to the development of support for rural employment specifically related to age? For instance, what resources have been committed to the development of apprenticeship schemes and transferable skills for training older people in their own communities?
Cabinet Secretary.
In dealing with the point essentially from where Claudia Beamish concluded her remarks, the Government firmly is taking actions right across the country to ensure that there is local access to skills development in all parts of the country. So rurality we make every effort to overcome the obstacles that rurality can create for individuals. And that is about some of the approaches that are taken to distance learning, for example, and the way in which distance learning is used in rural locations. It is also about making sure that there is a credible and accessible range of support mechanisms in all parts of the country. That's reflected in the availability of support through particular mechanisms through the enterprise agencies, but also through the work in partnership with Chambers of Commerce into the bargain. The Government also is determined to ensure that we maximise access to online skills and resources. I appreciate in some parts of rural Scotland broadband access can be an issue in that respect into the bargain, but we do try to maximise access to these resources in every part of the country.
I don't have time for a further question. I apologise to Patricia Ferguson. The next item of business is a debate on motion number 5087 in the name of Lewis MacDonald on policing in Scotland. Members who wish to speak in the debate should press the request to speak button now.